The reality of global payroll is that it's easier now than ever to be harmonizing and bringing things together.
It's a yes or no answer for me. No, from a tech systems perspective. Yes, from a service and people and reporting perspective.
In order to make it truly global, I think we got to think a little bit bold. And I think that's kind of what we're here to talk about and see how we can do that.
About 5 years ago, I wrote about the fact that payroll was ripe for disruption. And I'm so pleased to see the progress that we have made since then. It's good for business, it's good for employees, and it's also good for payroll professionals. And so today I want to discuss with experts what it actually means to bring your payroll together at the global level. And I do that with 3 very experienced guests on the topic. Lindsay Ross, CHRO from Bitpanda, Pete Tiliakos, analyst and advisor at 360 Insights, and Bruce van Wyk, formerly the CEO of PaySpace, and they have just become part of Deel. And so my first question is, does global payroll exist? And if not, what would it take to get us there?
Does it exist? Probably not totally yet, would be my initial response. I think we're making some pretty bold moves to get there. And when we talk about the challenges or why it's not there or what is the reality today, I think for most folks in this space, it's really, we have a lot of different providers that claim to be global, but it requires a lot of local expertise. So you often end up with that middleman on the ground. And why is that? Because you have local tax, you have local regulations, you have local bank payment requirements and all sorts of different things. So there's a whole sort of element around that makes it really challenging across the world to make it truly unified and global.
So Pete, from an industry point of view, what would your answer be?
Payroll was never really built and meant to be global, right? It was always, and to be honest, it's hyper local. But global organizations need a centralized, harmonized viewpoint of all of that. They need certainly a harmonized experience and all the great things that you would want from a single platform. But it didn't entirely exist, right? We had so many local solutions built from the bottom up, never really a top down to bring it all together. And so from that, I think you were seeing a lot of organizations operating in exactly that same fashion. And to your point, in the last, probably 6 to 10 years, we've seen this accelerate extremely because of cloud. It's really fundamentally cloud technology that has enabled the opportunity for these local solutions to come together to form and or be built into a global solution.
So we've heard from the customer, who is a great analyst, industry point of view, and now I'm giving it to Bruce to tell us from a platform perspective. What do you think? How would you answer the question?
I think it's an intriguing question because the question is, has it existed? It's a yes or no answer for me. No, from a tech systems perspective. Yes, from a service and people and reporting perspective, really why we've seen aggregation tools come about. But the critical one is, can it exist? And that answer is a definitive yes. But I think what's more important about that is when and how. I mean, we're going after it because it is possible and it is now being done. So it's an exciting time, right? And I also think that it's been accelerated because of the fact that COVID really fast-tracked what was coming anyway, which is not only enterprise business requires this. You now have SME business that does need to employ talent around the globe, and they need to get those people paid and have the compliance there. So there's a push from all angles, which makes it even more exciting.
And so what does good look like today from your perspective as the customer?
I would always leverage 2 perspectives. So as the user of the payroll tool and the system and the process, I think for us, what do we want? We would want something that is simple, that is easy to access, that is uniform in reporting, that gives me the right data information, right? And so when you talk about what good looks like, it's that single point of access to somebody to be able to provide us that information and who's not afraid to give that guidance, right? And that ultimately, not only from the employer side is fantastic, but again, from the employee's perspective, they actually get the answers and they get it fast. It's the speed that matters.
Organizations, particularly as they scale, especially as they go outside their home country, they're looking for more agility, right? More resiliency, more flex in their payroll solution to be able to ebb with them as they grow, as they divest. And that's not going to happen if you're sitting it on top of your organization on top of an outdated solution. So incredibly, incredibly important. I think value enabler that payroll is delivering now is org agility.
So if you have more than 5 systems to manage payroll, then how do you reconcile all that information? And for you as the CHRO of Bitpanda, what did you have to do to ensure that that information was correct?
I think from our perspective, what unfortunately, because as we had a single provider, but actually it wasn't, with multiple different local real providers, when we got this type of information in, we would consolidate it. We would introduce that 4, 6, 8 principle, making sure that things were working. But actually what the implication is time. And so you have to build in a longer review period, right? And reconciliation period, which actually is painful, because then there's no ability in the business to be able to make adjustments. So that actually means if somebody has a salary increase or a bonus payment or anything that's coming through, expenses, if they don't make that exact cutoff at that exact period in time, which is actually quite far out, they don't get it until the next month. And so that is, from a speed perspective, a huge issue.
Pete, when you find a client in this situation, so having systems for various countries, contemplating to go to a global model because of better reporting, better user experience, what do you advise them?
What I always advise folks is, first, look for the thing that you're headed, where you're headed, right? To support where you're headed, not where you are. One of the key things I think we often sometimes see are firms will kind of storm off to do global payroll, transformation, but they don't necessarily have an end game. They're just sort of buying technology maybe and shifting things around. So that's not necessarily the right way to go about it. So first, it's making sure they have a strategy. But second, I think the beauty of extensibility in cloud now says, look, you don't necessarily have to rip and replace. You also don't necessarily have to throw away existing investments, right? Maybe you're good at a region. Maybe you have a solution that's working well and you've made an investment. You have to maybe retain and carry that investment through to its life cycle. I think that's where the integration can help you, right? And you can certainly now, more than ever, the flexibility in the solutions that are out there, being able to land and expand, right? Maybe today it's 1 or 2 countries, and a small long tail population, but maybe tomorrow it's a larger long tail set or a bigger group of populations. So I think there's just a lot of flexibility that is available. So it's really about looking at where you are, where you're trying to get to, what you're trying to accomplish, and then looking at what your strengths and weaknesses are and utilizing those solutions to help you bring everything to the state that you're looking for, but also supplement your strengths and gaps.
Like Pete says, so look, I think the criticality is APIs make that integration possible. So if it's driven by legacy, people tend to struggle. And that's where you want to see is, are you using and can you utilize API technology to make sure that when you are integrating, it's talking seamlessly and in real time. So those are some of the pointers I'd give out on that.
5 years from now, if we are organizing this webinar again, and we're talking about global payroll, what will we be talking about, Pete?
I hope we're talking about more progress. I think we've got a lot of organizations that are behind. There's not a digestion of this stuff fast enough, right? There's too many reactions versus proactive nature. So we've got to get more organizations transformed. And if we do, I think we're going to be talking about a very different expectation of payroll, right? I think you're going to be looking at them as a strategic value enabler, a COE that, again, is going to be a strategic advisor and helping the organization achieve its goals and maintain compliance and stay out of trouble, right? I think that's going to be the key. It's only going to get more and more intense.
I think the future is that payroll itself, because it's got the tools, the mechanisms, the compliance, everything that everybody is building, which is awesome, really becomes that enabling function that creates genuine, incredible experiences for the employees, and that puts that experience at the center of everything they do. That would be the future for me.
I think it's going to be a breath, or passing the baton, which is the younger generation to take that baton of where payroll came from, and to actually get it delivered to the modernized, sexy way that payroll can be. And that's what I want to be talking about, because it's happening. And now it's just about looking back in the rearview mirror and talking about how cool it was to have done it the way we did it.